Hello everyone, it is I, Veritas, and today, in this commentary, I'm going to be going over CarmenRider because, oh boy, there's a lot to go over here. And no, I'm not going over the stupid drama amongst Carmen, Septipaws, or whoever, and how Carmen should be cancelled because of something about suicide or whatever, because frankly, I don't care. Besides, even if this drama never happened, I would still make this video because, well, CarmenRider is a fucking dumbass who really needs to be put in her place. And I'm gonna prove she's a dumbass by going over all of the stupid shit that I could find on her channel. So, let's get into it. Yeah, this bitch has definitely never read 1984 before.
Because it's an art style that's main characteristic is individuals that look like children. If you're wondering that what I'm trying to say is there is a community of people, a very large group of people on the internet that is completely dedicated towards the creation and distribution of what is basically CP.
They're not real children. They're fucking drawings, so it isn't CP.
Yeah, no shit, CarmenRider. They're drawings. Drawings of what?
The reason actual CP is morally wrong is because CP hurts actual children physically and mentally. Lollies and shodas aren't real. Thus, any pain they feel has no real consequences.
True, but lolly and shota stuff are still immoral because they're both meant to elicit feelings of arousal in favor of what appears to be prepubescent children.
One of the main things that kind of inspired me to make this video was a poll I saw on a subreddit for Genshin Impact.
It's pronounced Genshin Impact. Also, you haven't really explained the problem yet.
Hoyo. So there was a poll on one of their NSFW hentai servers, r/Genshin Impact hentai.
Oh, You're not funny.
Also, porn of video games is nothing new, so there's really nothing to be upset about.
This poll basically asked the entirety of the subreddit if they believe they should ban NSFW artwork of characters that are pretty much depictions of minors.
They're called lollies.
Lollies being characters who are meant to look like minors.
4.8 thousand people said yes.
This really do be a 1984 moment.
Yeah, this bitch has definitely never read 1984 before.
What kind of rhetoric are they using to justify their no vote? Because the girls were really fighting. They were fiercely debating this topic.
It's almost as if people are passionate about things like censorship on the internet.
I'm sorry, since when did censorship by state actors become relevant to this discussion over private individuals self-policing their own communities?
Topic. So let's take a look, shall we? Because you'll find that some of the most incriminating things come out when you allow them to speak freely.
Are you suggesting that these people's free speech should be violated just because they disagree with you? If so, then that's fucking horrible. In your eyes, a genre of hentai is morally worse than a violation of a constitutional right.
Damn! Accusing Liam of wanting lolicons to be unconstitutionally censored by the state or by entities acting on behalf of the state? That's a pretty heavy claim. Are you gonna actually prove that they actually want the state or entities acting on behalf of the state to censor lolicons? No? Well, I guess that claim can be thrown into the garbage, along with you.
It seemed that the main excuse that a lot of people were using was the phrase, "It's just drawings, it's just artwork."
Because it is.
Of what?
And while objectively, yes, they are just drawings, the thing is those drawings attract the attention of certain individuals.
That is partially true.
Really? Communities that make sexual depictions of children attract people who want to do sexual acts to children?
Why is it that this lolicon community is obsessed with media that is also simultaneously popular with—
You say that, but then you show Kana, a character from Miss Kabashi's Dragon Maid, a show which is TV-14. If you're 14 plus, chances are you already know not to fuck with pedophiles.
Apparently teenagers are just invincible to pedos.
youth. I don't really think that's a coincidence. And that's the main issue. That's what a lot of people are rightfully concerned about. And
That just sounds like fear-mongering for an agenda, honestly.
The agenda being, you know, not wanting literal pedos in our communities.
as I said before, these people jump from fandom to fandom, any place where they can masquerade behind the illusion that they're just interested in the fan art of the game. For every supply, there's always a demand.
What did any of that have to do with supply and demand?
The pieces of media with the lollies are the supply, and the pedos are the demand.
Today, we're going to be covering Stone Toss, and from the get-go, you might think that's a bit weird. Compared to the other people we covered, he's not as bad. I want to point out that comic creators like this are barely touched on.
I mean, all he does is make edgy comics, so there isn't much to talk about.
Not just edgy comics, Carmen. You see, Stone Toss makes edgy comics that promote far-right bigotry. This is just elementary common sense. This is not up for dispute. This shouldn't be up for dispute. The fact that you would dispute it speaks volumes on the inner workings of what goes on in your mind.
And before anyone goes, oh, well, he makes fun of the right too.
Wait a minute. Feathered face, funny beak, IQ of under 10, loud and noisy, smells spoiled fish on a hot summer's day, cross-eyed. This is no crow, that's a tanga!
But in all seriousness, when did this turn into a left-wing versus right-wing debate?
It's a video about Stone Toss, a political cartoonist. Did you not expect politics to be brought up in a video about a political cartoonist?
Yeah, I don't fucking care though. He's still pushing out hateful views.
You mean dark humor?
No, it ain't dark humor. It's hateful views.
He can start making fun of Trump a lot more, and it wouldn't matter if he's still pushing out comics with hateful views. So without further ado, let's get into Stone Toss.
Looks like we got another mushroom girl here.
One thing that's very clear from his comics is that he very much does go out of his way to attack the LGBTQ community.
You mean satirize?
No, that ain't what satire is, CarmenRider.
This comic tries to say that, oh, if you're going to say blackface is offensive, what about women dressing up as women?
No, it's supposed to be irony in how the two subjects parallel in a dark-humored manner.
How the fuck do they parallel? How the fuck does an offensive caricature of black people parallel to being a transgender person?
If I could have the floor for a moment, it's kind of funny how she suddenly strawmans her opponents as transphobic. Then again, do I expect anything else from Matanga?
No. Deviant Crow ain't strawmanning. Stone Toss is literally transphobic. My god, the dude literally makes 41% jokes and depicts trans women in the most masculine way possible. It's literally transphobia.
Another comic tries to say that it's kind of weird that LGBT people can have pride in their stuff, but MAGA can't?
Yeah, it's a double standard.
Yeah, man, pointing out that an oppressed group of people who should be protected by civil rights law should probably be treated differently than people who wear red hats is a double standard. Man, I'm very intelligent.
The thing is, people choose to adopt hateful views like the ones that are represented with MAGA.
You mean views you don't agree with?
Okay, I'm gonna present to you the biggest, hottest take of the century. What if the people that they disagree with also happen to simultaneously have hateful views? Yeah, shocker, I know. And, as it turns out, people in the MAGA movement are the ones who have been pushing back against, civil rights for queer people and other protected classes.
Trump supporters support stuff that affects people in minorities.
No, they support stuff that affects absolutely no one, and SJWs use Trump as a scapegoat.
Wow, Carmen, you're actually retarded. You literally just said that policy does not affect anybody. You hear that, folks? All of the attacks on LGBT rights promoted by Trump and his cronies, completely inconsequential. The erosion of voting rights, not a problem. The family separation policy for immigrants, literally just nothing burger. The appointment of 3 justices to the Supreme Court, which created a 6-3 conservative majority that has overturned precedent like Roe vs. Wade and Lemon vs. Kurtzman, will overturn precedent like Obergefell vs. Hodges, Lawrence vs. Texas, and Griswold vs. Connecticut, and will change the lives of American citizens and the functions of our government for decades to come. What a trivial concern. A literal fucking insurrection, negligible at best.
Another weird thing Stone Toss likes to preach on about is that when gay people have sex, they fuck through the butthole, so they must be fucking through shit. They must all have a shit fetish.
Shit fetish? No, it's a poop joke.
A poop joke that makes fun of gay people.
This one is probably like the worst one out of the bunch because it makes the flawed argument of saying people are often made gay because of trauma.
I mean, that's sometimes true.
No, it fucking isn't, you fucking moron!
You know, Stone Toss, for someone that likes to say that the LGBTQ community, they hate science, look at what they're doing. You seem to ignore the scientific evidence that gay people are born gay. Also, for someone that seems to be a die-hard biology fan, you kind of miss out on the fact that biology and gender are two different things.
The guy who separated the difference between sex and gender, John Money, was the guy who groomed two young boys to have sex with each other because of a botched circumcision. You really shouldn't take scientific advice from pedophiles. You might argue that a broken clock is right twice a day, right? Well, if gender and sex are different, then why do we need things like HRT? Why even have genital replacement surgery? It's just a social construct after all. Oh, not having those gives you dysphoria? It's almost as if those two things are the fucking same.
Ah yes, who could forget about our good old friend, transmedicalism? Man, there's a lot to go through here. First of all, you claim that John Money separated sex and gender. This statement implies that prior to Dr. Money's research, there was a general understanding that sex and gender were the same thing, only for John Money to separate the two later on. There's just one problem here though. The word gender did not even exist prior to the 1950s. In fact, it was John Money himself who coined the word gender to begin with, and I don't know if you know this, it's kind of difficult to separate the two words when one of them didn't even exist yet. Second of all, if gender is supposedly the same thing as biological sex, how do you explain the fact that trans people experience dysphoria from things that aren't even related to biology, like using the wrong pronouns? Like, there's nothing biological about pronouns, it's language. And language is literally a social construct. It's something that we humans created, yet plenty of trans people still get dysphoria over others using the wrong pronouns. How do you explain the fact that not all trans people actually need HRT or bottom surgery to deal with their dysphoria? How do you explain the fact that what a trans person wants to look like when they transition greatly differs depending on the culture they grew up in? It's almost as if sex and gender are two different words that refer to two different phenomena, with the former referring to a collection of biological characteristics like chromosomes, hormones, sex organs, etc., and the latter referring to a collection of social characteristics that we apply onto a person based upon their perceived biological sex.
A blatant theme amongst these comic creators I've been covering for a while now is blatant anti-Semitism. Like, not even trying to be subtle most of the time, just mostly blatant. Now, we're only going to cover one of his anti-Semitic comics to date, since we've pretty much, debunked the whole, Jewish people rule the world thing in a previous video.
Well, why not give us a refresher? Surely that would help your argument.
I'm sorry, do you actually want Deviant to explain why Jews don't control the world? Why do you need to have an explanation for why Jews don't control the fucking world?
Regardless, I can prove you wrong with one sentence.
Oh no, please don't tell me you're gonna do what I think you're gonna do.
Susan Wojcicki is part Jewish. That may not seem like much, but think about it. And a new trailer drops, where do you see it first? YouTube. Looking for specific news coverage. YouTube. Want to learn how to do something. YouTube. And that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Yep, Carmen is straight up just JQing, not even being subtle about it.
Well, the reason I want to bring this up nonetheless is that this is a person that's very popular and has been going around on Twitter for a while that's been posting blatantly anti-Semitic bullshit. And, of course, he's yet to be taken down.
Yeah, political satire isn't against Twitter TOS.
You're right. What is against Twitter TOS is JQing, which is what Stone Toss is doing.
This is a person with over 100,000 views, and he's posting hateful bullshit like this.
You mean satirical bullshit?
Sorry, but being a far-right bigot is not satire.
This one tries to say that Planned Parenthood is racist because a lot of black people have abortions. Even though that's not racist. Black people have a lot of abortions because, it's expensive to have a kid. And unlike white people, most black people do live in poverty.
Did you seriously just try to call us poor? Know about you, but that sounds like a racist generalization.
Yep, that's right. CarmenRider is actually doing the room temperature IQ argument that pointing out the well-accepted sociological fact that racial minorities are disadvantaged makes you racist towards those racial minorities. Thank you so much for that big, epic, galaxy brain take of yours, Carmen.
Both of these things, the femboy and the tomboy, point to a deeper existential malaise in a culture that has seriously lost its way. And before you libertarians start...
Everyone who doesn't agree with me is a libertarian. Well, I'm someone who leans to the right, and I still don't agree.
It's not...
Carmen, you are aware that libertarianism is generally considered a right-wing ideology?
This is a civilizational matter because we are a civilization under both tremendous attack and in steep decline.
Under attack? By who?
How should I know, Carmen? You people are the ones who are constantly complaining about how an international cabal of Jewish Bolshevik elites are destroying Western civilization with mass migration and cultural degeneracy. And by you people, I mean anti-intellectual political hacks.
This isn't some one-off response. This is a cultural phenomenon big enough to be a meme. But it should be clear that the tomboy abs is a gateway to fantasies of complete gender reversal.
Literally fucking how? Literally how does liking buff women as a man make you trans or whatever you're getting at? That's not how gender dysphoria works. Though I will say discrediting its existence is a very leftist thing to do.
For those who don't know, denying the existence of gender dysphoria is a euphemism for not being a transmedicalist shithead.
Let's do some more for luck. Here's a Japanese-looking girl, posted as the point-of-view character from the male Twitter user licking the tomboy abs. This is the complete inversion of Laura Mulvey's male gaze. This is the female gaze internalized by young men.
I have no fucking idea what that is, but I'm pretty sure it's bullshit.
Carmen, the fact that you just heard sociological theory and went, well, I don't understand it, so it's stupid, instead of engaging it with it intellectually like any other normal person would when presented with discussions of theory, perfectly illustrates how little you know about the subjects you attempt to talk about. Honestly, this is what I love about this particular commentary video right here. It really shows how Carmen has not grown up past the age of 14.
This is why the terrorists hate us.
Ah yes, the terrorists. Not Antifa.
I wouldn't exactly use the political movement responsible for one death in the past 3 decades or so as an example of terrorism, but okay, go off I guess.
Not ISIS, not Al-Qaeda.
Wow, bringing up Al-Qaeda as an example of a terrorist threat in 2022? Wow, such a topical and pressing issue. Say, why don't you bring up the Irish Republican Army or the Jacobins while you're at it?
I cannot blame the young men and the young women who are the victims of this. Yes, it is true that male and female traits are biologically rooted, but there is some slack there which culture picks up. And whatever slack is there, our culture is pushing to breaking point.
Okay, I will agree with the first thing you said. I'm not one to think that gender is a social construct. After all, if it was so irrelevant, we wouldn't have literal fucking movements dedicated to it.
Okay, Carmen, listen to me carefully. The idea of gender being a social construct does not mean that gender is irrelevant or trivial. Gender being a social construct just means that it isn't a natural phenomenon, but rather is the result of collective consensus amongst a given society. And look, you'd be right to believe that something being a social construct makes it negligible if we lived in Ooga Booga Neolithic caveman times, but we don't. You see, Carmen, I don't know if you know this, but we live in a society, and because we live in a society, we are constantly being affected by social forces, social biases, social norms, social constructs like gender.
But at the same time, I'm not sure how this ties into why the terrorists hate us.
Academic Agent has literally complained numerous times in this video about how supposed quote-unquote cultural degeneracy from gender and sexual liberation movements has led to quote-unquote foreign invaders destroying our quote-unquote superior Western civilization. I should not have to drill this into your fucking head just for you to understand.
Inducing problems of internal identity on young and impressionable men and women who live dazed and confused by all of this, addicted to porn and this sort of gender-bending nonsense on a daily basis.
Like I've said many times before, porn addiction doesn't exist. But also, how is being attracted to something confusing?
Looks like I'm gonna take on the role of being Carmen's special ed teacher for the rest of this video. You see, Carmen, Academic Agent, like many other on the right, are under the belief that society works best when everyone adhere to a monogamous, heterosexual, European Christian nuclear family unit consisting of the breadwinner husband who does all the work and the barefoot and pregnant wife who is subordinate to the hubby and stays home and takes care of the 2.3 children in the house. And, according to Academic Agent and the right, any deviation from this will somehow lead to the decadence of our people because, I don't know, sexual revolution bad.
I'm led to believe that the likes of Count Dankula and others have tried to normalise and defend all of this.
Count Dankula? What does he gotta do with this? Also, again, normalization is a pretty leftist argument, my guy.
What? Leftism is when you point out that people with taboo and shitty beliefs want to make those taboo beliefs optically normal and not shitty and taboo?
And when the barbarian does invade, can we be sure that these men will shake it all off and fight, or will they drop to their knees with their tongue hanging out?
Dude, the barbarians existed 122 years ago. They don't exist anymore.
Yeah, it's pretty clear to anyone with a functioning cortex that barbarians being used here is a dog whistle for the brown people.
And what is the traditional answer to all of this? Let's see what Julius Evola says in Revolt Against the Modern World.
We know that every traditional civilization is based on the will to order and give form, and that the traditional law is not oriented toward what is unqualified, equal, and indefinite, or, in other words, toward that impersonal mix in which the various parts of the whole become promiscuously or atomically similar, but rather intends these parts to be themselves, and to express as perfectly as possible their own typical nature. Therefore, particularly with regard to the genders, man and woman are two different types. Those who are born as men must realize themselves as men, while those who are born as women must realize themselves as women, overcoming any mixture and promiscuity of vocations. Even in regard to the supernatural vocation, man and woman must both have their own distinctive paths to follow, which cannot be altered without them turning into contradictory and inorganic ways of being.
Already, Evola rules out the prospect of the manly woman or the girly man as contradictory and inorganic.
I don't wish to butcher this guy's words or anything, but people can be born with the mind of a woman and a body of a man, and vice versa. That's how gender dysphoria happens.
Oh, Carmen, sweetie, if you really think that your pathetic, ill-informed, tiny Truska mindset is enough to antidote those who ideologically align with Julius Evola, then you need to go back to elementary. And I know that some of the more educated watching this are probably thinking to themselves, yes, that Julius Evola. Big yikes on part of Academic Agent. And this is actually pathetic. Agent isn't even the person I'm supposed to be criticizing, and yet I'm doing that way better than you are.
Evola suggests that men and women won't ever truly find themselves, so to speak, unless they adopt either the path of absolute affirmation, that's being a warrior, a man of action as a man, or a lover, that is giving herself over entirely to a man as a woman. And the other path is the path of absolute dedication, that's being an aesthetic, essentially one who transcends and overcomes sensual pleasures as a man, or a mother, that is giving herself entirely to the child as a woman. The hardest aspect for the liberal mind to understand in all of this is that those paths represent ultimate freedom in self-actualization for any of us.
Well, if traditionalism makes you feel accomplished in life, that's great. But that doesn't mean everyone is content with traditionalism.
Funny you say that, considering the fact that idea literally defeats the purpose of the right wing of politics. The purpose being the preservation of the already existing social hierarchies and norms of the status quo.
Isn't this what the commies want? When China banned feminine men from media? Again, you shouldn't be siding with commies.
You can really tell somebody's a fucking retard if they unironically believe that China, post-Deng Xiaoping market reforms, is communist.
And you should care. When you try to fob me off and get me not to care, whether you know it or not, you're working for the interests of the enemy.
What enemy?
He's talking about the Jews.
What's also annoying is when they kill us.
Then buy a gun.
Tell that to the Black Panthers.
The only notable thing this guy has done is work on the Boondocks. Everything else is just white people bad documentaries.
Oh really? How about we actually see what those white people bad documentaries are about? Let's see here. We have a documentary about Louis Armstrong, a documentary about hip-hop musicians, a documentary about hip-hop musicians again, a documentary about graffiti artists, a documentary about a hip-hop TV show, a documentary about an R&B musician, a documentary about large city black culture, yet another documentary about hip-hop musicians, literally a fourth documentary about hip-hop musicians, and an interview with a musician. I couldn't help but notice that these supposed white people bad documentaries are literally just documentaries about black culture. Interesting.
Every part of who I am has been distorted or criminalized.
Literally how?
First Amendment exists doesn't mean cultural erasure can't happen.
We're storming the Capitol!
It's funny when leftists use this as an argument as if they didn't burn down stores for the sake of a political narrative.
Well, this is just disingenuous. So, obviously, the prescription being presented here is that all those BLM demonstrations back in 2020 were just rioting for the sake of rioting. A prescription that falls flat when you consider two things. First of all, 93% of those demonstrations were literally not riots at all. Secondly, as for the 7% that actually ended up as riots, most of those only became violent because the police were violent first, meaning that the amount of actual rioting out of pure malicious intent is even smaller. That's because that's just how most riots work. Most aren't done for the sake of rioting. Hell, this is something that the great anti-Vietnam War activist and Star Trek fan himself, Martin Luther King Jr., understood perfectly. But it is not enough for me to stand before you tonight and condemn riots. It would be morally irresponsible for me to do that without, at the same time, condemning the contingent, intolerable conditions that exist in our society. These conditions are the things that cause individuals to feel that they have no other alternative than to engage in violent rebellions to get attention. And I must say tonight that a riot is the language of the unheard. And what is it America has failed to hear? It has failed to hear that the plight of the Negro poor has worsened over the last 12 or 15 years. It has failed to hear that the promises of freedom and justice have not been met. And it has failed to hear that large segments of white society are more concerned about tranquility and the status quo than about justice and humanity. Also, using the phrase political narrative to describe minorities being murdered by the state is incredibly sussy-wussy.
The government has plenty of money to prepare the Capitol or whatever. Those small businesses, on the other hand, can't come up with money as easily.
That's not how you measure the severity of the January 6th attack, fucktard. The severity of that attack is a matter of the success or failure of the insurrectionists trying to, well, insurrect the government, not by whether or not there are enough funds to fix the building.
Especially when sites like GoFundMe actively defend organizations like Antifa.
Decentralized movements are not organizations, baby.
White people, we are not your problem. You are.
Last time I checked, slavery was illegal for all races.
Considering the fact that the 13th Amendment literally carves out an exception to slavery in the form of prison labor, and considering the fact that black people are disproportionately arrested and suffer harsher punishments under the criminal justice system, I'm gonna have to tell you to shut up and stop being dumb.
White Jesus or black Jesus?
Jesus was not white.
Damn, they're really gonna make me talk about Jesus in front of the demons now, huh?
I don't really have an issue with the man upstairs. I'm not a fan, but I get the appeal. I mean, I do wear his merch technically.
Honestly, I don't even know if I'm considered a demon or not. And Shocker is more so the magic type rather than the from hell type.
Carmen, please learn to not fill your commentaries with unnecessary fluff. It makes it a fucking bore to watch.
Have you ever wondered what Richard Spencer was about to say right before he got punched in the face? Like, oh, Pepe the Frog. He's become kind of a symbol of being a Nazi?
So are we just gonna ignore the fact that someone got assaulted for saying words and you just let it slide? Alright.
Have you ever considered that it wasn't relevant to the point she was making?
Also, that's a bold assumption.
I'm sorry. It's bold to assume that Richard B. Spencer, the neo-Nazi, not a neo-Nazi, but the neo-Nazi, would say that?
But let's back up. Pepe was a stoner cartoon frog, then he became an internet legend, then he became an ironic Nazi, and then actual neo-Nazis realized that they could promote their sincere white supremacist beliefs by remixing them with ironic Nazi memes and spread them further than they've ever spread before.
Because we all know that people saying it's okay to be a certain race is the biggest way people become racist. Saying BLM in public is perfectly fine, and if you disagree, then you're just racist. But say, it's okay to be white, and all of a sudden people will write a whole paragraph on why you're a white supremacist or some shit.
True!
Pepe isn't a hate symbol. People call it that because they can't handle edgy jokes.
1350 and JQing isn't edgy humor, it's just bigotry.
I can at least see the argument for early 2000s nostalgia and equality. And I do understand that people are nostalgic for things that people grew up with. But if you really look at this shit, if you really look at it, there is no way that you can say that this is a downgrade from this, like design-wise.
Those aren't even the same character at that point. It's bad because instead of making the design look nicer and upgrading it, they just made an entirely different character.
How is that bad?
Now, I'm pretty sure they were trying to prove a point, but if you look at all these designs, all of the old She-Ra designs are from the same mold.
And
you might ask, what do I mean from the same mold? Well, you see, in the 80s, toys were made, and then the toys were the designs for the cartoon. So that is why all of the protagonists and characters pretty much look the same, because they quite literally have the same mold in real life. The literal only thing that is separating these characters from looking the exact same is the clothes, accessories, and hair color.
So you're mad because the characters have the same body type?
Well, yeah, it's literally lazy from an artistic perspective.
Also, why do you think the toys sold well in the first place?
Because the toys having the same mold made it easier for them to be manufactured en masse.
They also now are made to be more inclusive and diverse.
Yes, we made the character black, so this character is better now.
Carmen, do you think I'm stupid? Do you think I didn't notice that anti-Semitic happy merchant caricature in your video? Do you think that I didn't notice that you were using the fact that a character was black as a point of complaint? Look, I have refrained from using a certain B word throughout this 30-minute roller coaster, but I just can't hold it anymore. Carmen, you are a bigot.
I think it would have been good, but as you pointed out, about half the video was focused on apologizing to you, but the other half was basically just going after others.
It was like maybe the first quarter, maybe, but it was so vague and didn't address anything. It's like, oh, I made bad comments to your mental health. Like, that's literally how Prison make Luke apologize to Peaches.
Considering that Peaches talks poorly about Jar behind his back to Nil, I'm not exactly sympathetic. Oh, whoops, did I say that? Now you have to deal with that thunderstorm, Peaches. That's what you get for not helping me in this situation.
Alright, Carmen. You have officially pissed me off. How much of a fucking whiny, entitled bitch baby do you have to be to slander hopeless Peaches, who was tortured and almost had her life ruined by barbaric savages, for not helping out your sorry, pathetic, pedophile, far-right apologizing ass because of something she supposedly did that you don't even provide evidence for? This is fucking inexcusable. You are a terrible person just for even thinking about saying this. Fuck you. You are shitty. Your content is shitty. I hope you spend the rest of your days rotting away in a garbage landfill alongside your shitty detractors Septipaws and Neko Coda. Anyway, that's all for today. Good night, and fuck CarmenRider.